It was a cold, moonless night when Raj left his friend Neha's birthday party. The celebration had ended later than expected, and by the time he got into his car, the clock had just crossed 11:30 p.m. The roads were almost empty, and the town, behind him, slowly faded into silence as he headed toward the highway that cut through the countryside. His own house was nearly an hour away, and though the long drive at night usually didn't bother him, something about that particular night felt different. He just didn't realize it yet. The highway stretched out endlessly in front of him, a ribbon of asphalt surrounded by vast open fields and thick, silent trees. There were no other vehicles in sight, no sign of life on either side, and no streetlights to guide the way. The only source of light came from his headlights, which carved a narrow path into the darkness ahead. His phone had lost signal about 10 minutes earlier, which wasn't unusual on that road, but the complete silence that followed made the isolation feel heavier. Trying to shake off the growing unease, Raj reached out and turned on the car's radio. But instead of music or a familiar voice, all he heard was static, a constant hissing noise that seemed to rise and fall like shallow breathing. He tried changing the station, twisting the dial slowly, but every channel gave the same result. More static. Annoyed, he turned the volume down, but didn't switch it off completely. The faint background noise, while eerie, felt somehow better than pure silence. The road ahead remained straight and endless. With no cars in front or behind, and no intersections to break the monotony, Raj's eyelids began to grow heavier. He sat up straighter and rolled the window down slightly, letting in a gust of cold air to stay alert. The chill bit at his face, sharp and sudden, but it worked. He focused again on the dark path ahead, and that's when he saw it. A faint figure. Up ahead, barely visible in the glare of his headlights, someone was standing at the edge of the road, still, unmoving, yet unmistakably there. Raj's foot eased off the accelerator and his car began to slow. As he got closer, the shape became clearer. It was a woman. She appeared to be dressed in white, her long hair falling over her face, covering most of it. She didn't look injured, at least not from what Raj could see. She was simply standing there, just outside the lane, with one arm raised, gently waving. His heart picked up a beat. His first thought was that maybe she had been in an accident or needed help. But there were no broken-down cars, no signs of a crash, nothing else at all, just her. As his car rolled to a stop a few feet away, Raj lowered the window slightly and called out, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" There was no answer. No movement. The woman continued to wave in that same slow, almost robotic manner. Her face remained hidden behind her hair. It was as though she hadn't heard him, or was deliberately ignoring him. Raj felt a strange pressure in his chest, the kind that comes when instincts start to whisper warnings. Something about her felt wrong. Deeply wrong. Still, he stayed. Where he was for a moment longer, waiting for some kind of response. But none came. The woman didn't speak. She didn't even turn her head. She just stood there, with that same unnatural wave. A strange silence hung in the air, and even the wind had died down. The radio static in the background suddenly seemed louder, like it was trying to fill a space that nature itself refused to touch. Raj slowly raised the window again and tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Every hair on his body stood on end. A cold sweat began to form at the back of his neck. Without saying another word, he eased the car forward. As the vehicle moved past her, he turned slightly to glance at her one last time through the side window. But the woman remained motionless, as if frozen in time. The moment his car cleared her position, he felt a deep sense of dread take hold of him, like he had just passed through something that wasn't meant to be real. His eyes shifted quickly to the rearview mirror, and that's when he saw nothing. She was gone. Vanished. There was no one behind him, no figure, no white dress, no waving arm. just an empty road stretching into darkness. It hadn't even been 5 seconds, yet the spot where she had stood was completely vacant. His foot pressed harder on the gas pedal without him realizing, and the car picked up speed. His breath came out in short, quick bursts. He kept checking the mirror, hoping, no, praying, that nothing would suddenly appear there. The static from the radio still played softly, but now it had a strange rhythm to it, like whispers buried beneath the noise. Raj didn't dare turn the volume up. He didn't want to know what might be hiding in that sound. He thought about stopping the car and turning around. Maybe he had imagined it. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, or exhaustion, or his mind, playing games. But deep down, he knew better. That woman had been there. And then she hadn't. And the way she vanished, it wasn't natural. His heart continued to pound as he sped down the highway, now fully awake and alert. The quiet country road no longer felt peaceful. It felt cursed, like something old and restless watched from the shadows, smiling at the fear it had just planted inside him. And Raj knew, without a doubt, that the night was far from over. Raj could feel his pulse racing as he continued to speed down the highway, desperately trying to put distance between himself and the eerie figure he had just encountered. The headlights of his car sliced through the darkness, illuminating nothing but the empty road ahead. The cold, biting wind that had entered through the window earlier now seemed to have lost its sting, replaced by an oppressive heat that clung to him like a heavy blanket. Sweat trickled down the back of his neck, his hands tight on the steering wheel. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he had just seen. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe he had imagined it all. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The silence in the car felt deafening. Raj could hear nothing but the soft hum of the engine, the occasional rustling of the tires against the asphalt, and the faint static from the radio. The static had become almost comforting in its familiarity, but it also reminded him of how the air around him had felt still, unnatural, when the woman had appeared on the side of the road. He had tried to dismiss it, but that nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach wouldn't let go. His mind kept replaying the moment, how she had stood there, motionless, with her hair obscuring her face, and that strange, unnatural wave that she hadn't stopped doing. Raj could almost feel her presence again, lurking just outside the edge of his memory. His mind conjured images of her standing in the woods, watching him, waiting for something. No, it couldn't be real. He had to keep telling himself that, or else he would lose his sanity. As Raj's grip tightened on the wheel, a sudden thump broke the silence, making him jerk in his seat. The sound had come from the back of the car, as if something heavy had fallen. It was a sharp, unexpected noise that sent a chill down his spine. His heart skipped a beat. He quickly glanced in the rearview mirror, his eyes darting to the back seat. The mirror reflected nothing but the empty space in his car. His breath caught in his throat. Nothing was there. He quickly turned his gaze back to the road ahead, his eyes scanning the dark, desolate landscape. But his mind kept going back to the sound. What had that been? Raj forced himself to focus, trying to ignore the unsettling feeling that was slowly creeping over him. But then came another sound, this one even louder, a soft scraping noise, like something dragging across the seat. He froze. What was happening? The feeling of something or someone being in the back of the car intensified. His hands were clammy, his palms sweating against the leather steering wheel. He reached over and locked the doors, even though he knew they were already locked. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that there was something or someone lurking just behind him, waiting for the right moment to strike. Without thinking, Raj pulled his foot off the gas and slammed on the brakes. The Thea. Tires squealed against the road as the car came to a sudden stop. His breath came in short, shallow gasps. He quickly glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see the woman from earlier sitting behind him in the back seat. But there was nothing. Nothing but darkness. His heartbeat echoed in his ears as he slowly turned around to face the back seat. He couldn't stop himself now. He had to check. There had to be an explanation. Something. Anything. But when he looked, the back seat was completely empty. Nothing but the faint outline of the seat in the dim light of the dashboard. Raj swallowed, hard, forcing himself to breathe. His thoughts were racing, his mind clouded with confusion and fear. He turned to check the rearview mirror again, almost as if expecting to see something, or someone, suddenly appear. But all he saw was the empty road behind him. With a shaky sigh of relief, he leaned back in his seat, still unable to fully relax. His eyes scanned the dark woods on the sides of the road, the endless stretch of trees that seemed to lean in closer with every passing mile. But that was when he noticed something. The back door, on the passenger side, was slightly ajar. Raj felt his stomach drop. He didn't remember opening it. Had he? He couldn't have. He had checked the doors just a few minutes ago, making sure everything was locked. The fear in him began to grow again, creeping into the pit of his stomach. He reached over to press the button to lock the doors again, but the more he thought about it, the more he wondered how it had come open. Was it possible that someone, had opened it while he was driving? He could feel the sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. It didn't make sense. None of it did. With a deep breath, Raj opened the door cautiously, his flashlight in hand. He stepped out of the car, his shoes crunching against the gravel as he moved around to the passenger side. The door was indeed open, just a crack, as if someone had been inside. His flashlight beam danced across the seat, revealing nothing more than the empty space inside, the seatbelt hanging loosely from the side. The interior of the car smelled like old leather and dust, nothing more. He checked the glove compartment. Nothing. He opened the trunk, even though he knew there was no way anyone could fit in there. Empty. Nothing. Raj closed the door with a trembling hand and walked back to the driver's side, still feeling like something was off. As he climbed back into the car, he couldn't help but glance around once more, his eyes scanning the trees. But there was still no sign of anyone, nothing unusual, no movement, no figures lurking in the shadows. Everything seemed still. Too still. And that's when he heard it. A voice. Soft. Almost whispering. It came from the woods, a faint sound that seemed to hang in the air. Raj froze. His heart raced in his chest. The voice was too quiet to make out, but it was unmistakably there. It felt like someone was speaking directly to him, but no one was around. He turned off the engine, his ears straining to catch any hint of the sound again. The wind had stopped, and the world around him felt heavy, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. The voice came again, louder this time. "Why did you leave me?" Raj's blood ran cold. He didn't know what to do. His hands were shaking as he reached for the keys. He had to get out of there. He had to leave. Now. Without thinking, he slammed the car into gear and sped off, his foot pressing harder on the accelerator than he had ever done before. The engine roared to life, and the car lurched forward, the tires squealing as he raced down the highway. But even as he drove faster, the voice continued to haunt him, echoing in his mind, as though it was coming from all around him. "Why did you leave me?" Each word felt like a weight pressing down on his chest. Raj couldn't escape it. She was still there. And no matter how fast he drove, he couldn't outrun the fear. Raj's car sped down the highway, the tires gripping the asphalt with a desperate urgency as he raced into the night. His foot pressed harder on the accelerator, pushing the car to go faster. He couldn't explain it, but he felt like he was being hunted. The voice, soft and haunting, still echoed in his mind. "Why did you leave me?" He couldn't shake it, couldn't stop hearing it, as if it had become a part of the car itself, a presence that followed him no matter how far he went. Each passing second seemed to drag, stretching the minutes into an eternity. The headlights illuminated nothing but the endless road ahead. His hands trembled on the steering wheel, a cold sweat dampening his forehead as he glanced nervously at the rearview mirror. Nothing. Nothing but the empty road behind him. Still, the voice lingered, whispering its haunting question over and over again. Why did you leave me? His eyes flickered from the rearview mirror to the dark woods on either side of the highway. The trees were now thick and dense, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward the road. A feeling of suffocating dread closed in around him, the isolation of the highway making everything feel even more sinister. He should have been comforted by the fact that there were no cars in sight, no one around, but instead, it felt like a curse. The silence seemed unnatural, as if the world itself had stopped, waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life again, louder than before, the static rising to a deafening level. Raj jumped in his seat, his heart leaping, into his throat. He turned the knob frantically, trying to silence it, but it wouldn't stop. The static filled the car, so overwhelming that it drowned out everything else. His breathing quickened, the noise now matching the frantic rhythm of his pulse. The world outside seemed to blur into a fog of shadows and endless black, and the car felt like a small, fragile vessel in the middle of an ocean of darkness. Then, as quickly as it had started, the static stopped. In the stillness that followed, the silence was so thick that Raj could hear his own heartbeat. His fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles turning white. His mind raced, but he couldn't focus on anything except the feeling of being watched. He checked the mirrors again, his eyes darting back and forth, but the highway remained empty. His gaze moved from the rear view to the side mirrors and back, over and over again. There was nothing but the road. But then something caught his attention. A figure far off in the distance appeared in the headlights, barely visible but unmistakable. It was standing at the edge of the road, much like the woman from before. Raj's heart skipped a beat, his breath catching in his chest. This time, the figure wasn't waving. It was simply standing there, motionless, its shape unclear in the dim light. The car seemed to slow on its own, as if drawn toward the figure by some invisible force. He couldn't look away, even as dread spread through him like a slow-burning fire. His foot lifted from the accelerator, and the car decelerated as he neared the figure. It was the same woman, the same pale figure dressed in white, her hair falling around her face like a veil. But something was different now. Something was off. The woman was no longer still. Raj's heart hammered in his chest as he watched in horror. Her head slowly turned toward him, and as her eyes met his, he froze. Her gaze wasn't human. There was nothing in her eyes, nothing except empty, hollow darkness. It was as if her eyes had been replaced with two deep voids, endless and black. The woman's lips parted slightly, and her voice, soft, broken, spoke again, the same chilling question. Why did you leave me? But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was louder, clearer, as if it came from right behind him, from the very air inside the car. Raj slammed his foot back on the accelerator, the engine roaring to life, as the car surged forward, breaking free of the hypnotic pull of the figure. His hands shook as he gripped the wheel, his body tense with fear. His foot never left the gas pedal as the car sped away, faster and faster. The headlights cut through the darkness, and the woods on either side blurred into streaks of shadow. His mind raced, trying to understand what was happening. Was this some kind of trick? A hallucination? No, this was real. This had to be real. The figure was still there, standing at the edge of the road, her eyes never leaving him, as if watching his every move. And as Raj sped away, a strange, sickening sense of finality filled him. He couldn't outrun her. He couldn't escape. The question, the voice, haunted him. Why did you leave me? Each word felt like a weight, pressing down on his chest, suffocating him. He could still hear it, even as he tried to distance himself from the image of her in the rearview mirror. The car was speeding, but Raj's thoughts were scattered, his focus broken. He didn't know how far he had driven or how much time had passed. He just knew he needed to get away. But the road ahead still seemed endless, stretching on into the void of the night. The trees blurred past, the same dark figures that had haunted him since the moment he had first seen her standing there. Suddenly, the headlights flickered. At first it was barely noticeable, a faint dip in brightness, but it was enough to catch Raj's attention. He reached down instinctively to adjust the controls, but the flickering continued. The light seemed to pulse, growing dimmer, flickering, more rapidly, as though something was interfering with the power. And then, the car's engine stuttered. It was subtle at first, just a small sputter, but the car's forward motion slowed. Raj felt the sinking feeling in his stomach. The engine sputtered again, louder this time, as if the car was losing power. Panicking, Raj slammed his foot down harder on the accelerator, but the car didn't respond. It slowed even further, the engine's coughing sound filling the silence. Inside the car, his breath hitched in his throat as he turned the wheel, trying to maintain control. The road seemed to narrow, the dark trees closing in around him, and for a moment, it felt like the world was spinning. His eyes darted to the rearview mirror once more, expecting to see nothing, just like before. But to his horror, the woman was no longer at the side of the road. She was right behind him. She had followed him. The figure stood there, right behind his car, her face mere inches from the glass. The void of her eyes stared straight at him, and her lips parted again. Her voice came, louder this time, as if the very air itself was vibrating with her words. "Why did you leave me?" Raj's heart froze. The car's engine sputtered again, and the headlights flickered out completely, leaving him in complete darkness. Raj's entire body tensed as the car plunged into complete darkness. The headlights were gone. The engine, once roaring beneath him, was now a sickly cough, choking on its last breaths. A deep dread filled the pit of his stomach, and the suffocating silence that followed the engine's sputter pressed in on him, making it hard to breathe. His hands clenched the steering wheel with all the strength he could muster, but nothing mattered. The car wasn't responding. Panic gripped his chest as he slammed his foot on the accelerator, desperately trying to coax it to move, to push him forward. But the car remained still. The absence of sound was deafening. The figure was still there. Raj's heart raced in his chest as he turned his head toward the rearview mirror again. The woman's face was pressed against the glass, her hollow eyes locking with his. Her face was unnervingly pale, with a sharp contrast between the ghostly white of her skin and the dark shadows that seemed to cling to her. Her lips parted, her voice coming again, soft yet unmistakable, vibrating through the car's thick silence. "Why did you leave me?" Raj's blood ran cold. He could feel the words in his bones, vibrating through his body, as though they had penetrated the very fabric of the car. They carried a weight, a heaviness that made it impossible to move, to think, to escape. The sense of dread pressed down on him from every direction, suffocating him, trapping him in the claustrophobic space of his car. His breath came in shallow gasps, his chest tightening with fear. He tried to turn the ignition again, his fingers trembling as he fumbled with the keys. The engine coughed once more, but this time it was followed by a deep, guttural groan from somewhere beneath the car, as if the vehicle itself was alive and in pain. The wheels locked, the steering wheel stiffened, and the entire car seemed to shudder, its once smooth ride now transformed into something monstrous. He couldn't escape. His eyes shot to the rearview mirror again, and there she was, standing, in the same spot, her face now visible in the pale moonlight filtering through the windshield. But this time, something had changed. The woman's mouth stretched wide, her lips curling into an unnatural smile, a grin so wide and grotesque that it sent a chill down his spine. Her teeth gleamed, sharp and jagged, like something straight out of a nightmare. The voids of her eyes never wavered, never blinked. They stayed locked on him, unblinking, dark, and endless. Raj's mind raced as he looked around, his eyes darting from the mirrors to the dashboard, to the windows. But the road outside remained pitch black. His surroundings felt distorted, as though reality itself was twisting around him. The trees on either side of the road stretched into eerie, elongated shadows. The night had become suffocating, closing in from all directions. He needed to move, to get out of this nightmare, but the car wouldn't budge. His hand shook as it reached for the door handle, instinctively trying to escape. But it was locked. His mind screamed for him to unlock it, but no matter how hard he pulled, the door wouldn't open. Desperation flooded his thoughts, pushing him to panic. He yanked at the door handle again, harder this time, as if he could force the door to break open, but it remained stubbornly shut. The woman's voice echoed again, louder this time. "Why did you leave me?" The words vibrated through his skull, drilling into his mind, reverberating with a sharp, unrelenting intensity. The pain was unbearable, and Raj could feel his sanity beginning to slip away. His heart pounded against his ribcage, his head spinning with a mix of confusion, fear, and rage. He couldn't understand it. Why was she doing this? Why him? The pain in his chest intensified, but it wasn't physical. It was emotional. The woman's words were tearing at something deep inside him, something he couldn't comprehend. His hands were slick with sweat now, and his breath was erratic. He felt trapped, like a rat in a cage with no way out. The urge to escape was overwhelming, but the woman's presence kept him rooted to the spot, unable to move. Then, as if on cue, the car's lights flickered back to life. The headlights blinked on, casting a harsh beam of light across the road. Ahead. Raj gasped in relief, but the relief was short-lived. The woman was no longer standing at the side of the road. She was in front of him. The figure had moved, crossing the highway with an unnatural speed. She stood now in the center of the road, her eyes still locked onto his. Raj's mind reeled, unable to make sense of what was happening. His foot slammed down on the brake, but the car didn't slow. It was as if the vehicle had a mind of its own, continuing forward, toward the woman who stood frozen in place. Her eyes, empty and hollow, stared at him without a flicker of emotion. Raj's foot continued to press harder on the brake, but the car refused to stop. The distance between them was closing rapidly. His mind screamed for him to turn the wheel, to swerve, but his body couldn't respond. He was paralyzed by fear, helpless to do anything but watch as the car hurtled forward. As he neared her, he could hear her voice again, louder this time, filling the entire car. "Why did you leave me?" The words echoed in his mind, reverberating in his bones, twisting and turning inside him. There was no escape from the question. No matter how fast he tried to go, no matter how hard he tried to run, the voice was there, chasing him, haunting him. At the last possible second, Raj wrenched the steering wheel to the right, jerking the car violently off the road. The tires screeched, and the car slid across the dirt and gravel, the sound of metal grinding against the earth filling his ears. He slammed the brakes, his heart pounding as the car finally came to a halt, just inches, from the trees that lined the side of the highway. For a moment, there was silence. The woman was gone. Raj sat there, breathing heavily, his body trembling with the aftermath of pure terror. He had done it. He had escaped. But as he looked around, everything felt wrong. The trees seemed darker, the shadows deeper. The world around him felt distorted, like it wasn't real. He glanced back at the highway, but there was no sign of the woman. There was no sign of anything. His hand hovered over the ignition, but he couldn't bring himself to turn the key. The silence around him seemed too heavy, too suffocating. Raj wasn't sure if he should get out of the car or if staying inside was safer. Either way, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever had happened tonight, whatever that woman was, it was far from over. The question she had asked haunted him still. "Why did you leave me?" And in that moment, Raj understood something he hadn't before. He wasn't running from her. He was running from himself.